The great hall of the Xylar Dominion shimmered with gold and violet light, its towering pillars etched with the history of 1,000 conquered worlds. The air vibrated with the hum of anticipation, an electric thrill that pulsed through the millions watching across the galaxy. Every Xylar world had tuned in. Every news channel was broadcasting it live. Today the Dominion would show its strength. Today they would make an example of humanity. In the center of the hall, under the massive gaze of the Dominion's High Council, stood Ambassador Nathan Hale, humanity's only diplomat within Xylar space. His uniform, torn and stained with blood, still carried the insignia of the Terran Republic. Chains of glowing plasma bound his wrists and neck, pulsing with energy every few seconds, a reminder that even the smallest movement could burn his skin to ash. Rows of Xylar nobles sat in curved thrones surrounding the stage. Their skin, pale blue and glistening like glass, reflected the light of the floating banners above them. Banners displaying the Dominion's sigil, an open claw gripping a broken sphere. The Xylar Chancellor rose from his seat, his elongated eyes narrowing at the human below. His voice, deep and echoing, carried through the hall. "Ambassador Nathan Hale of Earth," he began, every word heavy with mockery. "You stand accused of defiance, arrogance, and the crime of demanding justice from your betters. How do you plead?" Hale lifted his head slowly. His lips were cracked, his face bruised, but his eyes, they burned with a quiet human fire. "I plead," he said, voice steady, "that your empire will answer for the lives you've taken." The hall erupted in laughter. Thousands of Xylar officials cackled and hissed, their voices blending into a chorus of contempt. "You humans think yourselves equal to the stars," one shouted. "You crawl from your tiny blue rock and dare to speak of justice?" Hale didn't flinch. "You massacred 12,000 civilians on Vesta Colony. You called it an accident of territorial enforcement. Those were families, children." His voice rose now, echoing through the chamber. "You think your power shields you from consequence, but you've forgotten one thing." The Chancellor's clawed hand slammed onto the podium. The laughter stopped. "Enough!" His eyes gleamed with a cruel smile. "You speak of consequence. Then learn the price of defiance." Hale stared up at him, unblinking. "You mistake mercy for weakness." The Chancellor tilted his head. "And you mistake weakness for significance." He turned to the guards. "End this." A hum filled the air. A device unfolded behind Hale. An energy disintegrator, ancient and cruel. The chamber's light dimmed as its power core charged. Every camera drone focused in, transmitting the image across hundreds of worlds. Hale closed his eyes. His final breath was calm. "Tell them." He whispered so faintly that only the nearest guard heard. "We offered peace first." Then the machine fired. A blinding column of blue light engulfed him. When it faded, nothing remained, not even dust. For a heartbeat there was silence. Then the crowd roared. Xylar voices filled the hall with triumph, the sound of victory, of domination. The Chancellor spread his arms and declared to the galaxy, "Let this be a lesson to all species who dare defy the Dominion. The Terrans have spoken their last word." The feed didn't end there. It spread across the galactic network, through military channels, civilian broadcasts, pirate frequencies. Billions saw it. Billions watched humanity's representative, their voice of peace, turn to vapor before an audience that cheered. And far away, beyond the Xylar borders, beyond the mapped systems, deep within the cold shadows of the Sol system, silent watchers received the transmission. In the command deck of the Sol Defense Network, the holographic feed froze on Hale's final image, that faint, defiant look before the beam struck. Around the table, admirals and intelligence officers sat in stunned silence. Admiral Ilara Voss, tall, grey-eyed, and carved from the steel of 100 wars, leaned forward. Her jaw tightened. "How long ago?" she asked. 37 minutes, ma'am," a young officer replied, his voice trembling. "The Xylar broadcast it on open channels. The entire galaxy's seen it." For a long moment no one spoke. Only the hum of the ship filled the silence. Then Voss stood. "Put the fleet on alert. All of them." The officer hesitated. "All, Admiral?" "Even—" Her gaze cut him off. "All activate Project Wrath." He nodded and began typing furiously. Across the system, encrypted signals pulsed through the void. Buried installations awoke. Dark stations hidden behind gas giants flared to life. Massive warships, dormant for years, powered up their engines, from the icy moons of Jupiter to the black edges of Neptune's orbit. The Terran navy stirred. One by one, ships rose from their hiding places, silent leviathans of black titanium and quantum armor. Their hulls bore no markings except a single symbol, a broken chain wrapped around a star. Inside the command ship, TNS Vengeance, crews rushed through corridors as alarms echoed softly, not in panic, but in purpose. Admiral Voss stood before the viewing screen, watching Earth rise in the distance, pale blue and silent. "They think we'll beg," she murmured. "They think we'll kneel." Behind her, her second-in-command whispered, "What are your orders, Admiral?" Voss turned, her face like carved stone. "We will answer their lesson," she said. "And when we do, the galaxy will remember the sound of our silence breaking." In that moment, 1,000 fleets received the same message, a single word: retribution. Engines rumbled across the dark. The stars seemed to flicker as hundreds of Terran ships aligned their trajectories. Out in the empty gulf between galaxies, where no one should have been watching, the sensors of alien civilizations began to detect movement. Something vast, something human, and somewhere in a quiet Xyla city, a child looked up at the sky as the stars dimmed, not knowing that the shadow growing above was the wrath of a species that had been mocked for mercy. Humanity's silence ended that night, and the galaxy would never know peace again. The Xyla Dominion celebrated for days after the execution. Hollow screens across their empire replayed Nathan Hale's death in endless loops, showing the humans' final words as a symbol of Xylar superiority. In every tavern, every spaceport, and every academy, Xyla citizens laughed at the foolish Terrans. Their broadcasts mocked humanity as the species that barked before being silenced. The galaxy took note, and many other empires watched closely, wondering if the humans would respond, or if they were truly broken. But deep within the Sol system, the humans did not speak. They did not broadcast a protest, nor did they threaten revenge. They simply went silent. It was a silence that made the Dominion's admirals uneasy. Inside the heavily shielded command center, beneath the surface of Lunar Base, Admiral Ilara Voss stood before a wall of holographic projections. Each display showed the same image, the last moment of Ambassador Hale frozen mid-frame. His calm eyes stared out of the image as if challenging the stars themselves. Around her, officers of the Terran Defense Council stood waiting for her command. The room was dim, the only light coming from the holograms and the faint red glow of alert signals pulsing in the corners. A young communications officer broke the silence. "Admiral, the Dominion hasn't responded to our inquiry. They've officially declared Hale's execution a necessary enforcement of galactic order." He hesitated, glancing down. "They've also issued a warning to all species not to interfere with Terran aggression." The words hung in the air like poison. Ilara's eyes hardened. "Aggression?" she repeated slowly. "They butchered a colony and murdered a diplomat, and they call us the aggressors?" Another officer, Commander Sato, clenched his fists. "They want us to strike first. They're counting on it. The moment we do, the Council of Systems will side with them. They'll paint us as warmongers." Ilara turned toward the vast star map projected before them. The Dominion's borders pulsed in crimson light, stretching across half the galaxy. Human colonies were tiny sparks on the edge of that red tide. "Then we won't strike first," she said quietly. "We'll strike last." Her words sent a chill through the room. No one spoke, but every officer understood what she meant. Humanity would not lash out blindly. They would not rage, they would plan. The Dominion had awakened something ancient within the human spirit, the patience of a species that had survived extinction more than once. In the silence that followed, Ilara tapped a small device on her wrist. A hidden symbol flashed on the display, an icon that hadn't been seen publicly for nearly 2 centuries. Project Wrath, the ultimate contingency plan. It was designed for one purpose only: to ensure humanity's survival if diplomacy failed and annihilation loomed. Across the Sol system, encrypted codes spread through the void. In the asteroid belts, hidden facilities powered up for the first time in decades. Massive shipyards beneath the icy crust of Europa came alive, revealing ships so vast they distorted gravity fields around them. Crews who had trained in secret for years received their final activation orders. The Terran Vanguard fleet, humanity's deadliest and most classified force, was waking from dormancy. On Mars, inside the underground hangars of the Phobos Defense Array, rows of mechanized drones lined up like silent soldiers. Their eyes glowed faint red as they came online. Human engineers whispered prayers to Hale's memory as they initialized weapon systems that had never been tested in battle. Far above Earth, orbiting the moon, the command ship TNS Vengeance floated silently in the darkness. Ilara didn't look at him. Her gaze remained on Earth, slowly rotating below them. "Then let them call it what they wish," she said. "They executed our voice of peace. Now they will hear our silence answer." From the shadow of Neptune, a communication beacon flickered to life, sending one encrypted signal across deep space. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even a message of war. It contained only 4 words. "The diplomat is dead." Every Terran ship, every hidden base, every operative in the outer colonies received the signal within hours. And everywhere, in every dark corner of human space, the response was the same. Quiet, disciplined, and chillingly calm. Engines ignited. Guns came online. Fleets formed ranks. Humanity did not scream for revenge. They prepared for it. Meanwhile, in the Xylar capital world of Thalzor, the Dominion's High Council gathered for celebration. The Chancellor stood before his advisors, holding a goblet of luminescent wine. "The Terrans have gone silent," he said proudly. "Their fleet remains in orbit. Their people are afraid. The lesson has been learned." But one of the older councillors shifted uneasily. "Chancellor, are you certain their silence means surrender?" The Chancellor smirked. "Of course. They are creatures of emotion, not strategy. They mourn. We conquer. Their species will fade back into obscurity." Outside the palace dome, the Xylar skyline glittered with victory lights. But above the clouds, beyond their sensors, human reconnaissance drones already drifted silently through the atmosphere, marking targets, measuring shield frequencies, and transmitting everything back to Sul. The Chancellor raised his goblet high. "To the end of the Terrans," he declared. The crowd roared. And in that same moment, light years away, Admiral Voss stood before her fleet and said only one sentence. "Mark every Xylar system. Every shipyard. Every capital. When the order comes, nothing survives." No one cheered. No one smiled. Humanity was done speaking. The calm had ended, and the storm was coming. In the weeks following the execution, the Xylar Dominion's arrogance reached its peak. Across the Empire's 112 worlds, citizens celebrated their so-called victory over the Terran pests. News anchors replayed the footage of Ambassador Hale's final words as if it were a joke. The Xylar Chancellor, proud and smug, declared that humanity had accepted its place beneath the Dominion's shadow. To the galaxy, it looked as though the Terrans had vanished back into their corner of space, humiliated and broken. But the Xylar had no idea that every laugh, every cheer, every broadcast mocking humanity was being recorded and archived by Terran intelligence. They didn't realize that their arrogance was feeding the fire already burning beneath the calm surface of Sol. In the Xylar capital of Thalzor, the High Command met in the War Spire, a towering black fortress that scraped the edge of the planet's atmosphere. Fleet Commander Vrax Talon, the Dominion's most decorated admiral, stood before a massive holographic projection of the galactic map. "Our scouts report no Terran movement beyond their home systems," he announced, confidence dripping from every word. "Their fleets remain silent, their borders unchanged. They are too frightened to retaliate." The room filled with approving murmurs. One councillor chuckled. "The humans talk of vengeance, yet their ships hide behind their sun. They are nothing but loud primates with metal toys." Another added, "Their diplomats speak of peace, but they only understand fear. We showed them their place." Laughter rippled through the room, but one younger officer hesitated. His name was Lieutenant Kareth, and though his scales gleamed with youth, his instincts were sharp. "With respect, my lords," he began carefully, "humans have a history of silence before action." "The archives from the early contact wars," Vrax interrupted with a dismissive wave. "Old history. They were savages then, scrambling for scraps of metal. This is a new age. The Dominion controls half the galaxy. Humanity is lucky we even allow them to exist." The councillor beside him smirked. "Perhaps we should visit their system. Take a few moons as tribute," perhaps, Vrax said with a grin, But why waste our time? Their fear will keep them chained. As the Xyla basked in their illusion of dominance, their fleets grew complacent. Patrols became lazy, scanning less and boasting more. Outposts along the human border were manned by second-rate officers who thought of the Terrans as harmless. Defense grids were left half-operational. War academies taught that humanity was a species of emotional children, dangerous only when provoked, but easily cowed once punished. Meanwhile, deep in the uncharted regions beyond the Dominion's sensors, the Terran Vanguard fleet continued to prepare. Inside the TNS Vengeance, Admiral Ilara Voss studied a three-dimensional model of Xyla space. Thousands of red lights marked shipyards, military hubs, and supply chains. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of command. They think our silence means fear. Good, let them believe that. Every day they laugh is another day we get closer. Her officers nodded. Commander Sato leaned forward. Phase drive prototypes are ready. Testing shows successful displacement jumps beyond Xyla detection range. Voss's expression darkened with satisfaction. Excellent. Once the fleet reaches full readiness, they won't even see us coming. Across the fleet, thousands of human engineers worked in silence. Ships were refitted with new stealth technology powered by quantum phase reactors. Drone carriers were loaded with nanite clouds, tiny autonomous swarms capable of dismantling entire space stations, molecule by molecule. Every hull bore the same emblem, the broken chain of vengeance. But in the galaxy at large, humanity's name was being erased. Xyla propaganda filled the networks, claiming that Earth was pleading for peace and offering reparations for its transgressions. The Chancellor even staged a public address. Standing before a crowd of billions, he declared, "Let this day mark the end of Terran defiance." Their diplomat's death was mercy. Had they continued their insolence, we would have wiped them from the stars entirely. The crowd roared, banners waving in triumph. From his palace balcony, the Chancellor gazed at the twin moons of Thalzor and smiled. "The Terrans have learned humility," he said to his advisors. "They are no longer a threat." But in that same moment, light years away in the cold dark between stars, the first human recon teams slipped silently across Dominion borders. No transmissions, no traces, just shadows in the void, marking targets and mapping weaknesses. One Xyla outpost near the border of Sector Theta reported a strange anomaly, a sensor ghost that moved faster than light and vanished without a trace. The commander dismissed it as a glitch. Hours later, his station went dark. The Dominion never found the wreckage. Still, the Xyla laughed. Still, they mocked. Their news anchors broadcast endless arrogance, calling the humans mute primitives and a species of cowards. Even neutral alien races began to believe it. The galaxy saw the Dominion's confidence as proof of their power. But on Mars, in the underground halls of the Terran Command, Admiral Voss stood before her officers and said, "The Dominion believes we are done. They believe we fear them. That belief is our greatest weapon." Commander Sato asked quietly, "When will we strike, Admiral?" She turned toward the holographic image of Ambassador Hale, projected in soft blue light. His final words echoed faintly through the room. "You mistake mercy for weakness." Voss's voice was barely a whisper, when they laughed the loudest. And so the preparations continued in silence. The Xyla Dominion feasted on its pride, blind to the storm gathering beyond the edge of its empire. Every moment they celebrated brought humanity one step closer to vengeance. The galaxy believed the Terrans were finished. But the truth was simple. They were just waiting for the right time to remind the stars what fear truly meant. It began without warning. No declaration, no broadcast, no threats. One moment, the Xyla Dominion's border sectors pulsed with the normal hum of trade routes and patrol chatter, and the next, they fell silent. Outposts stopped transmitting. Fleets vanished from scanners. The stars themselves seemed to go dark. At first, the Dominion's high command believed it was a communications glitch, a solar storm or pirate interference. But as the hours passed, the truth became undeniable. Something was happening. Something vast. And it was human. In the depths of Xylar-controlled space near the mining world of Vorthon 6, the night sky split open. Without a ripple of hyperspace distortion, a shadow appeared, massive, silent, and invisible to conventional sensors. It was a Terran Dreadnought-class battleship, its black hull absorbing all starlight. Within seconds, more followed. 5, then 50, then hundreds, appearing out of the void as if summoned by the darkness itself. Each Terran vessel bore no insignia, no identification, no signal. Only one message was transmitted on open frequencies, for hail. Before the Xyla defense grid could react, the first strike began. The dreadnought TNS Vengeance launched a salvo of phase rail projectiles, each traveling faster than light, tearing through planetary shields as though they were mist. The sky over Vorthan 6 turned white. Xyla cities vaporized in silence, entire continents reduced to glass before a single distress call could escape. In orbit, Xyla Fleet Admiral Vrax Talon watched in disbelief. How did they breach our perimeter?" he shouted as alarms blared. His officers scrambled at their consoles, shouting conflicting reports. "Sir, they're ships. No warp signatures, no entry points. They just appeared." Another cried, "Return fire." Vrax roared, "All batteries, fire!" Beams of plasma and radiation tore through the void, but the Terran ships were already gone, flickering like ghosts. They reappeared behind the Xyla fleet and unleashed another barrage. One by one, Dominion cruisers detonated, their explosions lighting the blackness like falling suns. Within 8 minutes, the entire sector fleet was annihilated. Every Dominion communication relay sent out emergency alerts. Human forces detected. Unknown weapons. Immediate assistance required. But the messages never reached command. Human drones, faster than light, had already infiltrated the communication lattice, cutting the Dominion off from itself. Across 20 star systems, chaos reigned. Xyla colonies that had stood for centuries vanished in coordinated strikes. Refineries exploded. Military stations were reduced to dust. No surrender messages were answered. No survivors were spared. The Terrans did not broadcast demands or messages of conquest. They simply erased. On the Dominion homeworld, panic rippled through the Senate chamber. Chancellor Veroth slammed his fist against the table. "Impossible. They don't have this technology. They can't," he shouted. His science minister trembled, her voice cracking. "They must have been building it for decades. Every Terran colony, every mining project must have been feeding this fleet." Admiral Vrax appeared via hologram, his image distorted and flickering. "Chancellor, we are facing a weaponized phase drive network. They can jump between points in real space instantly. We can't predict where they'll appear next." "Then find them," Veroth screamed, but even as he spoke, the lights in the chamber flickered. Then they died. The hologram vanished. Far above Thalzor, in the shadow of the Dominion's defense grid, hundreds of small Terran stealth satellites decloaked. They had been hiding in orbit for weeks undetected. In perfect synchronization, they began transmitting a signal through the Dominion's entire network. A replay of Nathan Hale's execution. The video spread across every Xyla world, every screen, every broadcast frequency. Billions watched in horror as the image of their chancellor ordering Hale's death filled the sky once again. But this time, the feed didn't end there. A new message replaced it. Simple white text on black background. "You mistook mercy for weakness." Then the bombardment began. Entire orbital rings were shattered in a single synchronized strike. Human dreadnoughts appeared over industrial worlds, firing with mechanical precision. No speeches, no hatred, just cold, methodical destruction. The Xyla military couldn't comprehend it. Their sensors failed to track Terran movements. Their fleets disintegrated before even locking weapons. The galaxy watched in silence. News channels that once mocked humanity now trembled at the live feeds pouring in from the Dominion's outer worlds. Burning cities, collapsing spaceports, silent skies filled with Terran warships. Within 24 hours, 19 Xyla systems were gone. The Dominion's power grid fractured. Its armies fell apart. On the TNS Vengeance, Admiral Ilara Voss stood in the command center, her expression calm, almost sorrowful. "How many casualties?" she asked softly. "Minimal on our side," Commander Sato replied. "Dominion losses total." Ilara looked out into the stars. "They thought fear kept them safe," she murmured. "Now they will learn what silence can do." Her gaze hardened as the holographic display shifted, revealing the next set of coordinates, the Xylar core systems. "Phase jump the fleet," she ordered. "And tell the galaxy we are done whispering." Engines ignited across the darkness, rippling space itself as hundreds of Terran ships vanished into the void once more, leaving behind nothing but wreckage and flame. In the aftermath, a single transmission echoed across the collapsing Dominion network. Short, encrypted, impossible to trace. This is not war. This is justice. And as the Xyla homeworld braced for the inevitable, the rest of the galaxy finally understood the truth. Humanity had never been weak. They had simply been waiting for a reason. The Xyla Dominion had never known fear until now. Their fleets, once proud and countless, were gone. Their outposts burned. Their colonies lay silent, empty, drifting in space like broken bones. The great Dominion banners that once waved across the galaxy were nothing but ash. And yet the true horror had only begun. In the capital world of Thalzor, the sky was red with panic. The Dominion's Grand Defense Fleet orbited above, but even its commanders knew the truth. Humanity's fleets were closing in, moving faster than light, appearing and vanishing without warning. The Xyla Senate gathered in emergency session, the chamber echoing with shouts and fear. Chancellor Veroth stood before them, his voice trembling though he tried to sound strong. "We are not defeated," he insisted. "We are the Dominion. The humans are a minor species with stolen technology. We will strike back." But no one believed him anymore. The senators' faces were pale, their hands shaking. News had spread across the stars. 19 systems gone, hundreds of billions dead. Entire planets had been wiped out in minutes. Terran precision had been merciless, their attacks coordinated, unstoppable. Every system that had taken part in Hale's execution or the massacre of Vesta Colony was gone first. It wasn't war, it was judgment. On the massive command ship TNS Vengeance, Admiral Ilara Voss stood at the center of her war council, her eyes fixed on a holographic map of Dominion space. Red lights blinked across it, each one a destroyed system. Her officers waited in silence. "Broadcast it," she said finally. Commander Sato nodded and activated the transmission. Across every remaining Dominion world, screens flickered to life. Citizens, soldiers, slaves, all stopped to watch as a human face appeared. Admiral Voss. Her uniform was dark, her tone steady, her words cold as ice. "People of the Xyla Dominion, this is the Terran Republic." Her voice carried across thousands of systems. "You executed our ambassador. You slaughtered our civilians. We asked for peace and you gave us blood. Now the Terran people answer." Behind her, holograms displayed the burning wreckage of Dominion fleets. "We do not come for conquest. We come for justice. Every world that raised a weapon against us will fall. Every system that cheered for Hale's death will pay." The transmission spread through the entire network. Billions watched in silence. On Thalzor, the broadcast cut into the Chancellor's speech, replacing his image with Voss's calm face. The Xyla senators froze. "Cut the feed!" Veroth shouted, but it was too late. The message had already reached every corner of their empire. And then something unexpected happened. On the outer colonies, the enslaved races of the Dominion began to rise. The Corrin, the Murel, the Drath, and dozens of others, species oppressed for centuries, took up arms. They had seen the Terran message and heard the promise hidden between the words, freedom. The rebellions began small, one planet at a time, but they spread like wildfire. Xyla garrisons found themselves overwhelmed by their own labor forces. Entire battalions defected. In some places, humans didn't even have to strike. The enslaved races destroyed the Dominion from within. In a broadcast intercepted by Terran intelligence, a Corrin leader shouted into the chaos, "The humans have shown us the truth. The Dominion bleeds," and bleed it did. Within a week, half the Dominion's outer rim was lost. The once mighty empire was cracking apart. The Xyla Council tried to open negotiations with the neutral worlds, begging for aid, but no one answered. The galaxy had seen the Terran wrath and wanted no part of it. Meanwhile, the Terran fleets pressed forward relentlessly. Every strike was surgical, every movement calculated. Voss had forbidden unnecessary destruction. "We are not monsters," she told her captains. "We are memory. We are consequence." Yet even as the Dominion crumbled, Veroth refused to surrender. He broadcast desperate speeches, calling the humans cowards hiding behind machines. But his words rang hollow, drowned out by the sound of explosions echoing in the distance. On the floor of the Senate, Guards began abandoning their posts. Civilians flooded the spaceports, trying to escape a fate they knew was inevitable. The proud Xyla banners were torn down and burned by their own citizens. Far across the galaxy, Admiral Voss stood on her bridge, watching as reports came in, another fleet destroyed, another system liberated. Commander Sato approached quietly. "Admiral, intelligence reports uprisings across the Dominion. Their core fleets are collapsing." Voss nodded. "Then it's time." "Time for what?" Sato asked. She looked out at the stars. "For the galaxy to remember why you never break peace with humanity." Back on Thalzor, panic turned to despair. Every screen across the capital city flickered once more, showing a single image: Nathan Hale. His calm, human face looked out from the static,